so soin wie Gott, la Judim, oi so oiro, wir auf Simcha so soin wie Gott.
La Judim, oi so oiro, oi la Simcha so soin wie Gott. La Judim, oi so oiro, la Simcha so soin wie Gott.
Ken kintie lanu, oi la Simcha so soin wie Gott. Ay ken kintie lanu, oi la Simcha so soin wie Gott. Ay ken kintie lanu, oi la Simcha so soin wie Gott. Ay ken kintie lanu, oi la Simcha so soin wie Gott.
Okay, a good evening to everyone that's with us and to all those that are going to hear it via the recording. As usual, before Yom Tov, we like to have in our shul, the Beit Garden shul, a Zoom regarding the pertinent halachot for that particular year. And indeed, this year has been a complex year halachically. We started with a 3-day Yom Tov for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur on Shabbos, and finally we had a Asara B'Teves on Friday. And now we're getting to a Purim on Friday, which of course is better than a Asara B'Teves on Friday. And there are a few things that are different this year, so we're not going through the regular halachot of Purim that everybody knows. Everybody, thank God, has done many Purims in their life, but rather we're going to focus on the pertinent halachot for this particular year, namely the year in which Purim comes out on a Friday. So let's begin with Tanis Esther. First of all, Tanis Esther is on Thursday, and for all sakes and purposes, it's a regular Tanit Esther. But I did want to point out something that I think is very important regarding Tanit Esther. In the hierarchy of fast days, Tanit Esther is the lowest. The highest is Yom Kippur. The only thing that exempts you from Yom Kippur is, of course, Pikuach Nefesh, if your life is in danger if you fast. And the second on the list is Tisha B'Av, which is a little easier than Yom Kippur in this regard. Any chola she'ein bo sakana, namely anyone that happens to be someone that's sick in bed, has a fever, would call in sick to the office, is exempt from the fast of Tisha B'Av. Then come the 3 fast days that have to do with the Chorban, Tzom Gedalia, Asara B'Teves, and Shivas Har B'Tammuz. And these 3 fast days are, thank God, fast days that if you're healthy, you fast. A chola she'ein bo sakana, just like Tisha B'Av, is exempt. But in addition to which, the Shulchan Aruch does exempt me'ubarot and minikot, namely pregnant women and nursing women, and the list goes on for various ailments. The lowest on the list is Tanit Esther, in which even if you're lightly not feeling well, you can probably be exempt from the fast. The famous story about Rav Soloveitchik is that someone went up to him, Erev Tanit Esther, and said, Rabbi or Rav, the Rav, I have a question about Tanit Esther. And before he began, the Rav says you don't have to fast. To which the guy said, I didn't ask the question. To which Rav Soloveitchik said, what do you think, I'm stupid? In other words, he knew it's Tanit Esther. He knew that the exemptions are in reference to other fast days, by and large, much bigger. And therefore, obviously, if a student, 18, 19, 20 years old, is coming to him and saying, I have a question, he's probably exempt. So therefore, from my perspective, even if you're healthy and well, and of course you have to fast, you should obviously take the latest possible time of Alot HaShachar in order to begin the fast. That particular time is 4:48 a.m. So therefore, at 4:48 a.m., that's when the fast begins. So Tanis Esther is a regular day. Shachris, we say Tachanun, we say the long Tachanun, unfortunately. We say Slichos, we lein Vayichal. At Mincha, we lein Vayichal, and we read the Haftorah of the Yeshua Hashem Behi Matza'o. However, after the Chazarat Hashatz, in which we will say Anenu, we will not say Avinu Malkeinu, we will not say Tachanun, because it's Erev Purim. So obviously, Mincha is a bit shorter. Now, we get to Ma'ariv on Thursday night. Ma'ariv on Thursday night can begin from Shkia. Obviously, you cannot read the Megillah until nightfall, which is 18 minutes after sunset. However, you could begin Ma'ariv even earlier than that, from Shkia and onwards. And from that perspective, I am going to suggest that we begin Ma'ariv in our shul at 5:58, which is a few minutes after Shkia, and get to Megillah reading at the earliest possible time, which is 6:04 p.m. So therefore, no one has to fast longer than they have to. But the halacha is that you cannot break your fast until you hear Megillah. The Shulchan Aruch goes as far as to say that if you have it difficult to fast, but you still have to fast, you should read Megillah from Plaga Mincha, which is an hour and a quarter prior to nightfall, and then break your fast exactly on time. But you should not, I repeat, you should not, says the Ramah, break your fast before you hear Megillah. This year, this is true not just for us, but for everyone, even the Yerushalmim. And from this perspective, I don't think we have to make it harder than it should be. And therefore, at the first possible time that you can daven Ma'ariv, we will. And at the first possible time that we should read the Megillah, we will begin. So that's Thursday night. I would advise that Thursday night, people should also invest some time before they go to a Purim party, a Purim spiel, or whatnot, into getting ready for Shabbos, because Friday is going to be a busy day. Now we get to Friday. Friday is both Purim and Erev Shabbos. And that means there's a lot to do in a very short period of time. So let's begin right at the beginning. You shouldn't read Megillah before Nate's Hachama, before sunrise, which this particular year in Efrat is going to be at 5:51 a.m. You can read Megillah all day until Shkia, if need be. Namely, you can read Megillah until a minute before Shkia, which is 5:45. We're going to get back to that time because it's going to be critical for the rest of this Zoom. So Megillah reading is all day from sunrise until a minute before Shkia. And ultimately, that's mitzvah number 1 that we have to do. Mitzvah number 2 is matanot la'evyonim. Matanot la'evyonim, I would advise everyone to deposit it with an organization that will give it out during the day here in Israel. Again, during the day here in Israel, not an organization that's going to give it out during the day in America, because they may give it out after Purim ends here in Israel because of the time difference, or Australia on the other side of that same coin. And therefore, my advice is to deposit it early so you don't have to worry about it, and make sure that they will give it out bo bayom here in Israel, namely on Friday. This year, as everybody knows, even Yerushalayim will be reading Megillah on Thursday and giving Matanot Le'evyonim on Friday. However, lechatchila, Matanot Le'evyonim should be given to someone that's as chayav as you, not a Yerushalmi that has a little bit of a different chiyuv. And therefore, from this perspective, you should give it to the organization that's not a Jerusalem-based organization, or their office can be in Yerushalayim, but they will be giving it to Aniyim outside Yerushalayim. So again, I would advise to do that this week and make sure that it's taken care of prior to Friday. You have enough on your head. Mitzvah number 3 is Shalach Manos. And Shalach Manos, as everybody knows, is a pretty simple mitzvah. If you want to do the minimum, all you got to do is give 2 manot, namely 2 kinds of food with 2 different brachos, to 1 person. And from this perspective, it would be easy. However, it seems like Shalach Manos does usually take up the bulk of the day for most of us, and that's going to lead to the other things we're about to talk about. Since Shalach Manos takes up so much time, it indeed has to, in some way or another, jive with the mitzvah of Seudah, which is the 4th mitzvah of the day, and of course, all the preparations for Shabbos that we need to do on a very basic level. Even if you cleaned your house before Friday, even if everything's ready, you of course have to make sure the food is ready because you can't cook on Shabbos. So even if you took care of that before Friday, there's still probably going to be a few things you need to do for Shabbos, from taking a shower, putting on your Shabbos clothes, getting things ready for Shabbos, so that indeed you won't suffer the day after Purim. So Purim this year has 4 mitzvot like every year, but it also has to jive with our normal preparations for Shabbos. And now we get to the most important mitzvah of the day, and that, of course, is the Seudah. Why do I say the most important? Because everything else on a Friday Purim can be taken care of within the first hour of the day. You read Megillah, and then Matanot Le'Evyonim is given ahead of time, but it's given out that day. You give one Shalach Manas, or a few more, and that's it. Seudah causes us a bit of a problem. On the one hand, the mitzvah is to eat it, and only during the day. You cannot fulfill the mitzvah by eating it the night before. And on the other hand, there are rules and regulations about what you're allowed to eat and not allowed to eat on an Erev Shabbos. So the question is, how is it that these two will be able to live together? Eating the Seudah and only on Friday. And on the other hand, the regulations that limit eating big meals on Friday. Add to that according to the majority of poskim, you probably need bread and meat at the Seudah. Namely, it can't be breakfast, or what we usually eat for breakfast. It has to be a Seudah with bread and meat. And there's a mitzvah of chayav inish levesume befuria, to drink a little more than usual. So you put all these things together, you're going to have a meal with wine and with meat and with bread, and all this on a Friday when you really shouldn't be eating too much so you can get to Shabbos with an appetite. So what do? In general, there are 4 shitot in the poskim how to jive these two. Shita number 1, we'll call it the Ramaz Shita. The Ramaz says, have the Seudah in the morning. In other words, maybe give out Shalach Manos in the afternoon, but have the Seudah in the morning. So if you usually do the opposite, switch it around. After Megillah reading, like a good Ashkama minion, they serve chulent, no problem. So at 10 o'clock in the morning, 10:30 in the morning, have a Seudah. This Seudah will consist of bread and with meat and wine, and you'll be finished and should be finished before Chatzot of the day. Midday on Purim is going to be 11:48. So says the Ramah, have a Seudah at 10 o'clock, finish by 11:48, get that out of the way. By the time Shabbos comes in later, Shabbos begins at 5:28. And then Ma'ariv, whatever, you'll be coming home 6:30, 6:45. You'll have an appetite for the Shabbos meal. Very good solution, nothing to add. The second solution, we'll call it the Maharil's solution. The Maharil says that you can eat on an Erev Shabbos a big meal like the Purim Seudah, namely bread and wine and meat, if, I repeat, if you begin the meal before the 9th halachic hour of the day. The 9th halachic hour of the day on Purim is approximately 2:45 p.m., and therefore, before 2:45 p.m., sit down to a Seudah. So you can do your Shalach Manos in the morning. However, you have to have the Seudah begin before 2:45. What's the problem with this particular solution? Number 1, the Seudah is going to be very close to Shabbos, and therefore it may hurt your Shabbos preparations. Number 2, it's hard for me to believe that you'll have an appetite for the Shabbos meal Friday night if you're going to have a major Seudah just a few hours before Shabbos. This is not lunch. Lunch is usually 12, 1 o'clock. This is 2:45 in the afternoon. So if you start 2:45 in the afternoon, say you finish by 4, it's hard for me to believe you'll have an appetite for Friday night, which is a halachic problem. Those are the 2 problems with the Maharil's solution. But it's brought in many, many poskim, and indeed, many people do it. Obviously, the earlier you do it, 12:30, 1 o'clock, the better. You'll have a better appetite for Shabbos, and you won't get into the issue of hurting your Shabbos preparations. The third solution is basically to say, it's not our fault, with due respect. We didn't put Purim on Shabbos, on Friday. We had nothing to do with it. The calendar put it there. And the Ramah paskins that any Seudah that takes place on Friday, and it's that day that you're supposed to do the mitzvah, be it a bris, a pidyon haben, and in our case, a Seudah, you can have it on Friday. He doesn't say that you need to have it before Chatzot, like he says in Hilchos Purim. He just says, general, you can have it. And indeed, the Mishnah Berurah says better to start before the 9th hour, but b'di'evet, you can have it all day. So whenever you want during the day, you could sit down, have bread, have meat, have a little more wine than usual, as long as you do it before a minute before Shkia. A minute before Shkia is a mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos. So from your perspective, you can sit down and do this at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Shabbos begins 5:28, b'di'evet till 5:45. You can basically have a seuda as long as you finish by 5:45. Obviously, the problems I mentioned earlier only quadruple. It's very close to Shabbos. You probably won't have an appetite for Friday night at all, not to mention the fact you'll be very rushed. So therefore, I don't know how many people are going to have a seuda that close to Shabbos, but you should know that the Ramah in Hilchos Shabbos, not in Hilchos Purim, in Hilchos Shabbos, does allow it. The fourth solution, after the solution of having it in the morning, before the 9th hour, or whenever you want during the day, is called Pores Mapa Umekadesh. Pores Mapa Umekadesh is a Gemara in Meseches Psachim, Daf Kuf. The Gemara is not, I repeat, is not b'di'eved, like if someone by mistake got into Shabbos and he was still eating. It's talking about it as if it's an occurrence that can happen. And therefore, I don't like many rabbis that have been saying it's b'di'eved, even though it is an opinion. It doesn't seem to be the pshat of the Gemara. Add to that many Gdolei HaPoskim, from Rishonim to Achronim, have said that this is a very good solution for a Friday Purim. Amongst them, and I quote, the Meiri says explicitly, this is what we did when Purim comes out on Friday. We do Pores Mapa Umekadesh, which I'm going to present in a moment. The Nahar Mitzrayim, who was a rabbi in Cairo in the 19th into the 20th century, says, this is what we do. When I went to Yerushalayim, where Purim comes out on Friday much more often, this is what we did. The Magen Avraham quotes the Mordechai that says, this is what you should do. The, I would say, advantages are amazing. You can have a normal Friday, almost, because you have Shabbos preparations, but you can give Shalach Manas in the morning into the afternoon. Then you can get the house ready, the Shabbos food ready. And then, like the Ramah says, at 4:15, you sit down with your Shabbos clothes on already to a Purim Seuda, which will go into Shabbos. Now, what is the protocol? The protocol of Pores Mapa Umekadesh. So I'm going to put it right now in the chat so people could see it, but it's basically pretty simple. You know what? Better I don't put it into the chat, because those that will see it via video will actually not be able to see it. So I just wrote it out, and therefore I'm going to share a screen, and you'll be able to see it right in front of you. Here it is. Let's begin. Pores Mapa Umekadesh. Here is the protocol. Number 1, daven mincha before the Purim meal. So you have an early mincha. There's early minchas in our neighborhood. I'm pretty sure there will be on Purim this year as well. Make sure to daven mincha at 1, 1:30, 12:30, whatever it is. Number 2, get your Shabbos preparations done before the Seuda. Make sure you're showered and you're in your Shabbos clothes before the Seuda. Because again, this Seuda is naturally going into Shabbos. There's no time in the middle to start switching. So if you like to sit at your Seuda with your costume, either forget it or sit with your costume, but put it over your Shabbos clothes. So very simply, when Shabbos comes in, you'll take it off. So basically, say by 4:15 in the afternoon, or as I wrote here, 45 minutes before Shabbos, you should be sitting down to the Seuda. So Shabbos begins at 5:28 p.m. in Efrat, 5:28. So therefore, I advised to start the meal by around 4:15. So at 4:15 on Friday, if you're doing this option, you are all prepared for Shabbos, including your Shabbos clothes. The house has the timers on, the heating on, or the air conditioning on because of the weather that we're having at this time of the year. Everything is done, set, before you sit down to the Seuda. At 4:15, you wash your hands, you say Hamotzi, you have bread, you have meat, you have a little more wine than usual to get a little tipsy, and basically you are fulfilling the Seudah during the day of Purim. At 5:28, which is candle lighting time, usually the woman of the house, if there is no woman of the house, someone else, gets up to light the Shabbos candles. Someone else at the meal will then take a tablecloth and do what's called pores mapa, literally cover the table with all the food, so no one's going to touch the food. No one's going to touch the food until Kiddush. Next, exactly at this particular time, namely after candle lighting and prior to 5:45, say Kabbalat Shabbat, namely Yedid Nefesh, Lechun Eranana, and the 6 Mizmorim of Tehillim we usually say, Lecha Dodi, Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos, Hashem Malach, Bamim Matlikin, you probably can skip if you say it before 5:45. The reason for that is in parentheses. Bamim Matlikin is probably said because of the last Mishnah, which talks about the fact that Erev Shabbat, on the eve of Shabbos, Ben Hashmashos, certain things are allowed. If you're saying it before 5:45, it's not Ben Hashmashos yet. So basically, you daven Kabbalat Shabbat at home, no minyan required for Kabbalat Shabbat in general, and in this case, of course, tablecloth is still covering the table. So we lit the candles for Shabbos, we said Kabbalat Shabbat. Now, you uncover the table, and ultimately, when you uncover the table, you say Kiddush. However, since you already said a Borei Pri Hagefen on the wine that you ate at the Purim Seudah, which started at 4:15, the Kiddush will not consist of Borei Pri Hagefen. So you say Yom HaShishi Vayechulu, etc., until Asher Bara Elokim La'asot, skip over Borei Pri Hagefen, and just say the bracha of Kiddush. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzabanu, etc., until the words Baruch Atah Hashem, Mekadesh HaShabbat, and of course drink from the wine, at least a rov revit, a cheekful. Obviously, like any Kiddush, make sure the challahs on the table, the lechem mishneh, the 2 full loaves of challah, are covered for Kiddush. So you can uncover the table for Kiddush, and you should, but you then have to cover the challahs like you do every week. And now we have to do lechem mishneh. But once again, we already made a motzi. So what do? We pick up the lechem mishneh. You could say l'shem lechem mishneh, and everyone should eat a kibetza, or at least a kizayit, from the lechem mishneh. In addition to which, it's important to eat some of the food on Shabbos, so that don't fill yourself up at 4:15, so that by the time Shabbos comes in and you did this protocol, you got no room. It's important to eat some of the food, and I don't mean only dessert, during Shabbos itself. So it's a meal that combines Purim and Shabbos, but it has to manifest itself by you eating both on Purim, Friday, and on Shabbos itself. Then you, of course, bench machlokas, but I will give the bottom line in my opinion, and that is that you bench ultimately with both al hanisim and ritzei. Al hanisim because that's when you started the Seudah, and the Meiri adds even the 15th is, of course, Shushan Purim is indeed part of the miracle, and ritzei because that's when you're benching on Shabbos. After the meal, again, after the meal, you should daven Ma'ariv with a minyan. Now, if for some reason it's impossible to have a minyan for Ma'ariv after the meal, then b'di'eved, I repeat, b'di'eved, you can leave the meal in the middle and go daven Ma'ariv. However, that's only if you leave a few people behind. So from this perspective, if everyone's going to go to shul, this will call into question this whole protocol. Thus, much better to try to organize a minyan for Ma'ariv after the meal. So therefore, instead of Ma'ariv being when it usually is, Ma'ariv should be at around 7 o'clock in the evening, 7:30 in the evening, after having both the Purim Seudah and the Shabbos meal, doing this whole protocol. If, however, you have to leave during the meal because there is no minyan for Ma'ariv later, then, as I said earlier, make sure that you leave a few people behind. You can go to shul to daven Ma'ariv, come back, and continue the protocol. But you have to leave a few people behind. If not, then it calls into question this whole protocol, and then it becomes a machlokes Shulchan Aruch and Ramah. Ramah is Mekel, Shulchan Aruch is Machmir, and it's a machlokes Rishonim before them, and I really don't believe it's a good idea. So therefore, whoever's doing do Pares Mapa Umekadesh and follow this protocol, in my humble opinion, they should also try to see if in their locale others are doing it and get 10 people together. And Be'ezrat Hashem, if you get 10 people together, you will be able to daven Ma'ariv after doing this whole protocol, having both the Purim Seudah and the Shabbos Friday night meal, and ultimately being able to get to Friday night with everything. Now, the advantage is, as I said, it's wonderful. You can do your normal Friday, or to be more precise, Purim activities during the morning. You can then get ready for Shabbos in the afternoon. You cut everything at 4:15, and ultimately you don't have to worry about an appetite for Shabbos because it's one meal. So I really think this is a great and wonderful solution that starts in the Gemara, goes to the Rishonim, to our very day, and I would advise it. However, you have to follow the protocol. So God willing, after this Zoom, I will send the protocol to the list of the shul, and everybody will know exactly what to do with regard to Pares Mapa Umekadesh. So basically, that ends the, I would say, sensitive and pertinent halachot of this Purim. Once we get to Shabbos morning, it will be a normal Shabbos morning for us. If there are people that every single year celebrate 2 days of Purim because they believe that they, A, see Yerushalayim from their house, and B, just seeing Yerushalayim would obligate them in Purim, this particular year, it's even bigger machlokas. Namely, do you need to on Shabbos say Al Anisim? Do you need to on Sunday send at least one Shalach Manas and have a Seudah, or not? This year it's easier on the one hand because everybody reads the Megillah and gives Matanot Le'Evyonim on Friday, so that all that's left individually is Al Anisim on Shabbos as well as on Sunday, giving one Shalach Manas and having a Seudah. But on the other hand, I have to admit that halachically, this year, there are many more poskim that say that there's no such thing as having a 3-day Purim misafik. The reason for that is because of an opinion that exists every year of Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank. Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, Zichrono Livracha, was the Rav of Yerushalayim. And he basically called into question every year having 2 days of Purim. Namely, if someone goes to yeshiva in Dimona and celebrates with them on Yudalit, and then on a normal year comes home to Yerushalayim towards the evening of Tetvav, according to Rova Poskim, he would have to celebrate Purim again. But according to Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, there is no such thing. Namely, you have one Purim. The only person that has 2 Purims is who's someone that, based on the Yerushalmi, Oker dirato bilel tetvav. In other words, after Purim's over in Efrat, he moves to Yerushalayim, pump, on the night of the 14th, going into the 15th. If indeed he became a Yerushalmi on Purim, then he has 2 Purims. On Friday in his former house, and on a normal year, the next day in Yerushalayim. So if this year someone is moving from Efrat to Yerushalayim on Friday Purim, this Friday, then he would have 2 Purims, or to be more precise, 3 Purims. Namely, he would celebrate with Yerushalayim as well. But, says Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, if you do not move to Yerushalayim, but you just happen to wake up there at Alot HaShachar of the actual day of Tetvav, that's not enough. You have to actually live there if you already celebrated Purim a day before. That's his normal opinion. This year, many poskim say we should paskin like him because having a 3-day Purim is already something very unique. A lot of poskim, I repeat, many poskim say, the Yalkut Yosef says it, Rabbi Yashiv says it, that you should basically not have a Purim Misafek. So even if on a normal year you celebrate, even in Efrat, 2 days of Purim, this year you wouldn't have to do that and have a 3-day Purim. However, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu disagrees. The Shari Yitzchak disagrees. And Lahavdil Elef Alfei Havdalot, I personally disagree as well. The reason I disagree is because on a normative year, Rova poskim say if you wake up on Tetvav on the 15th in a place that is obligated in Purim, and perhaps your house in Efrat is one of those places, at least Rab Nevinsal felt that all of the Zayid should celebrate Purim only on Tetvav, then it's no different this year. So what would that mean for someone living in Efrat this year? That basically means that on Friday night in Ma'ariv, as well as Shabbos morning, as well as Shabbos Musaf, as well as Shabbos Mincha, you add in Al Hanisim. Sunday, you don't have to go crazy. Give one Shalach Manis to a Yerushalmi or to someone that's celebrating Purim like you in Efrat, 2 minim to one person, and have a Seudah. A Seudah would mean that during the day on Sunday, have, again, bread and meat and a little wine, more than usual, and that would basically be it. So that's for people who every year celebrate what we call 2 days of Purim. This year would be 3 days. In my opinion, this year is no different than any other year. But you should know that there are many poskim that say this year is different. I don't see the difference. Mi hakatan. So, to reiterate what we spoke about, Thursday is a regular time. It says there, Thursday night in our shul, we will start Ma'ariv at the first possible time and Megillah at the first possible time. There's no reason to make the fast longer than it should be. But you're not supposed to break the fast before Megillah reading every year, and this year is no different. Friday, there's 4 mitzvot to do. Megillah reading could be done from Netzach Hama, 5:51, all the way till a minute before Shkia, 5:45. The second mitzvah, Matanot La'Evyonim, I suggest you deposit it early with whatever organization you trust, as long as they give it out Bo Bayom here in Israel to people outside Yerushalayim. Number 3, Shalach Manos, will depend on when you do the Seudah, which is number 4. There's 4 options for the Seudah. We'll call it the Ramah option of doing it in the morning, the Maharil option of starting it before 2:45 in the afternoon, the Ramah option number 2, which is anytime you want during the day. Both of those middle options are problematic because you won't have an appetite for Shabbos, and it will probably impinge on your Shabbos preparations. And the 4th option is Pares Mapal Mekadesh, which is what I advise, and ultimately we'll send the protocol to the shul list. After the Seudah is the best time to daven Ma'ariv. If you can't get a minyan for Ma'ariv after the Seudah, then I would advise to leave during the Seudah to daven Ma'ariv on condition that a few people are staying behind at the Seudah. I'm not going to say the word women, because many women go to shul, but a few people are staying behind. If that's not going to happen, it calls into question if you can leave the Seudah in the middle, which means the whole Pares Mapal Mekadesh is called into question, which means this whole thing falls apart. And therefore, if you're doing Pares Mapal Mekadesh, my advice is to check in your locale, as we will in our shul, how many people are doing it to determine if we're going to do a late Ma'ariv Friday night or a Ma'ariv on time Friday night. Finally, if you do what we call 2 days of Purim, even in Efrat, because you see Yerushalayim, I don't believe this year is any different than any year, and therefore that means that on Friday night, Shabbos morning, Shabbos afternoon, you add Al Anisim to your davening and to your benching, and of course Sunday, give Shalach Manos, and of course have a Seudah. I don't see this year as being any different. Again, there are poskim that see this year as different. That basically sums up the Purim uniqueness of a Friday. I have many videos on each and every point that we touched if you want to see it more in detail. But in general, we touched all the pertinent halachot of this coming Purim. If there's any questions, with pleasure. Great. So we solved all the world's problems. Wishing everyone a very, very happy Purim Sameach despite all the events around us. And of course, if there's any questions whatsoever, my number is, of course, open to you 24/7.
Shanas Yaakov, so lo vesomecho,